Well guys, good morning. Today we are getting to do something really fun. So last week I told you guys that we weren't at a castle and that we might not get to see dragons. Well, we did end up seeing some dragons. And this week we are getting to go to a real castle right here in Ohio. It's called the Piatt Castles, and I can't wait to take you guys inside. Here we go. This is a real castle.
A more accurate word would be chateau, since a castle is technically a fortified structure or series of structures with a noble family living inside. This house isn't exactly fortified and the Piatts aren't nobility. It's not in the strictest sense of the word a technical castle, but people see stone walls and tower and it really generates their imagination, and so we've really gotten behind that. So this was the library here in Macachi Castle. This was home to Abram Piatt. He first began work on this building when he got back from the Civil War in 1864. It took him 7 years to build from the ground up using locally quarried stone and locally cut wood. Even some of the style is sort of a French Gothic revival. This home could not be confused for a cathedral in France, but they took elements of that they liked and meshed it with existing American styles. I can open that up and let some breeze in. One thing you'll notice throughout the house is that it's surprisingly cool once we open all the windows and doors. That's because they oriented the house just so to take advantage of natural breezes for cooling the place down in the summertime. And we can mosey through here to the drawing room. So called because it is for withdrawing before or after a fancy meal. Well, this room being the largest and in some ways one of the more decorated rooms in the house was where they would have entertained and where they would have relaxed. This is a bighorn sheep skull and a set of bison horns. These were sent here from further out west. After the Civil War, Abram's sons traveled all over the country. When they would find something neat, they would ship it back home to their dad as a souvenir.
I see some spinning wheels here. We had an episode before where we got to see alpaca wool being spun.
Ooh.
And so that's actually a really cool callback for us.
That's very cool. Well, I'm glad you noticed these. In the Victorian age, when this home was built, nobody would have put a spinning wheel in their drawing room. This was actually put in by William McCoy Piatt, and he opened it for tours in 1912 for the first time. The spinning wheel belonged to his grandmother, Elizabeth. In 1912, this spinning wheel was pretty cool and pretty old, but now it's very cool and very old. So we're very glad we've been able to hang on to so many original Piatt family members' items and have them displayed somewhat similarly to the way they would have first been displayed when the home first opened for tours. And in that same vein, we have this curio cabinet. This also belonged to William McCoy, and there's over 1,000 individual pieces inside. And many of the Native American tools and artifacts, as well as the fossils, came from on and around this property.
Wow. Yeah. There's so many different ones in there. It's so cool.
These ceilings were painted by a man named Oliver Frey. He was a Swiss man who studied fresco painting, and that's what we have here, is paint on plaster. So he worked for Abram and Don, and he made enough money and stayed here long enough to become a United States citizen. And he settled in Kenton, Ohio.
Well, hi, how are you?
Hi, thank you. It was actually Abram's son who met the artist when he was studying in France. And Don was the one who wanted to hire somebody. So Abram's son finds him, Don hires him, and then he comes over and paints this building afterwards.
Margaret, tell me, this has kind of been your family home. How much time have you spent here in, with all of the different artifacts and all the different family heirlooms?
In some ways my whole life, but in other ways not. I mean, I grew up with it all, at which point it just seemed normal to me because we all just accept what we see when we're kids. I really didn't like history as a result of growing up with this, but then later on I ended up working in a living history museum and very slowly discovered that I loved history. And now I've been back here for 20 years.
Now you might notice the slots on the sides of the steps here. These are what are called dust channels. The carpeting on the steps was not originals, they were just wooden. And if you had any kind of dust or dirt on the stairs, you could sweep it to one side. It would all slide down the floor and it could be swept right out the door. We have the master suite over here, an individual bedroom to that side.
That's so cool.
Isn't that cool?
That is really cool. You really, and I mean, even looking at the rocks and the stone in the building, you really get that even that medieval feeling, like it's not supposed to be here. It's something very special.
You know, the real connection between this and medieval times is that the process of cutting the stone is exactly the same. That had not changed at all. And one of the things we do here for educational programming is that Jim teaches kids how to chisel stone. So he has this big block of stone and he has all the goggles and he shows them and tells them how to do it carefully and then lets each one of them try. And you know, after you have worked on chiseling, then you start looking at the rock and you realize that somebody's hand made every cut, every single cut. So lots of times people of all ages will say to me, oh, you must be a princess, or it must have been great to be a princess. I kind of didn't feel like it was that great until I got to thinking that the classic princesses in our favorite stories often had some really hard things they had to do. We were open as a business 7 days a week, and so I was pretty much off by myself playing and trying to stay out of the way and not allowed to go out into the fancier parts of the house. So that wasn't so much fun. What I wanted to share with you was my very favorite toy. And I loved this so much, and it is Sleeping Beauty's Playtime set. And I was looking at it carefully and noticed that it has the copyright of 1959 on it. And here's what I like about it. It's a book, and it opens up into 4 different sets. We have the palace room, and then there are parts that you would add on to it so that the king and queen would each have the throne. And then there was a tower that went around the top. Here would be scene 1, and then you turn it around, and there's scene 2. What I loved about this, it's such a simple little thing, and it's so interactive, long before there were the kind of interactives there are today. And I could spend so much time not only telling this story, but I could spend time making up my own stories. The first time somebody said to me, wasn't it great? Didn't you have a crown? Didn't you have a great big dress? I said, yeah, no, I really didn't. But what I ended up getting from growing up here was the incredible opportunity to meet people from all over the world, to learn that there's no such thing as a stranger, and to use my imagination. And so that's why we love people coming here now, to use their imaginations.
Now, historically, I'd be wearing what's called a padded jack or a gambeson underneath, a very thick quilted garment for padding, because just a metal shell wouldn't do anything for me. It's the padding that helps absorb all the impact. Just as important as the helmet is what's called the arming cap. This goes on underneath because the metal might stop a blade from going through, but that'll still ring your bell if you're getting bashed on the head. The flail, this was really great for if you're charging on a horse. A ton of momentum, and all of this weight, all of that momentum is focused in this little ball here at the end. So swinging this at somebody really soundly would really give them something to think about, and especially it could reach around shields and things. So this would be called a kite shield because of its kite-like shape, and you typically wear them while mounted. So on your horse, this gives you a lot of protection. Now, it's a bit heavier than a circular shield over there. If you're on a horse, you're not holding up all the weight yourself. So with this and my lance here, really getting a head start, you can see what a much smaller target I am wearing the armor with the shield on. All of the weight of a charging horse, all of the momentum focused in the tip of the lance. People weren't so much fighting with lances and shields when Abram built the home, but Abram and his sons did ride, before this castle was built, they rode off into the Civil War on the side of the Union. The tools definitely changed somewhat for them, but they were still protecting their home, and that is something that's fairly universal across history, is people still want to protect their home.
Columbus limestone, which is a sedimentary rock, and you can see the layers of the sediment there, is formed about 450 to about 390 million years ago. One of the wonderful things about limestone is its ease of shaping. It's, as rocks go, a fairly soft rock. Well, the techniques to shape it haven't changed since the Egyptians used limestone to build the pyramids. Hammers and chisels. There's pointed chisels for taking off large chunks, straight chisels for smoothing surfaces. A tooth chisel is a fast way to get down to a flatter surface. Cutting the limestone, you score a line. One of the things about limestone being a sedimentary rock is that it has a grain, much like wood, formed by the layers. Somebody who did this all the time would be able to really read the stone and understand more where it wants to break and take an advantage of its natural layers. And the same tools are used for sculpting. I mean, I have some chisels like this one with a curve in it that you can make nice little grooves.
Yeah.
The amount of time just to prepare the stone. Some of the big lintel stones over the doors and windows are probably on the range of 300 to 400 pounds.
And to believe the whole building was made of that effort and that time, you know, but it's also dedicated. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, history is just stories. It's the stories of people, human people. And whether they were 10,000 years ago, or whether they were last week or 20 years from now, there was the same people with the same makeup that you and I have. And so they have all the capacity for weirdness and quirkiness and fun and wit and charm and humor, but also they're so capable of great heroism and amazingly good deeds and generosity and kindness, and they're capable of some really bad things. But everybody is made up that way. We're made up that way. The people 15,000 years ago were made up that same way. And so when we think about the past, less of a string of facts and dates and it's no fun completely with all of the humanity taken out of it, I think we're missing out on acknowledging and thinking about history as just people who happened to live a while ago, as just people living their lives and trying their best a long time ago.
Well, guys, I hope you had an amazing time here at the Piatt Castle. I hope that you're checking out all the books that you can on princesses and princes, on castles, and on royal life. And I'll see you guys next week for our next great virtual field trip.